All right, so we are in chapter 19 of Leviticus, finishing up. Just a quick review. Last week, hey Christy, verse 33, when a stranger sojourns with you in your land, you shall not do him wrong. You shall treat the stranger who sojourns with you as the native among you. And you shall love him as yourself, for you were strangers in the land of Egypt. I am the Lord your God. Now, I had mentioned last week, this is one of the most important verses, at least in Leviticus, if not the whole Bible. God will actually refer back to this verse at least once again when we get into Leviticus, and he's going to say, you know what? You need to treat that person as if they were a sojourner. And when you read that, you're thinking, well, why would God want me to mistreat this person? Well, that's not what he's saying. He's referring back to this verse where God is saying, you better treat the sojourner as yourself. You need to love that person as yourself. So God is making a point with that. Talked about that last week. And let's start this morning in chapter 19, verse 35. You shall do no wrong in judgment, in measures of length or weight or quantity. So, if you're a leader and you're in a position of authority, if you're judging something, you better do it correctly. You better do it with God in mind. Do no wrong. Don't take advantage of somebody. And then he's talking about taking advantage of people in measures of length or weight or quantity. So if you're a workman or if you're a merchant, you're making exchanges with other people, you better make sure that what you're doing is correct, that it's just right, that it's accurate, okay? You shall have just balances. An ephah is an ephah is an ephah. This is how much an ephah weighs. We all agree on that. And that you're not going to have some squirrely, lightweight ephah that you're going to measure out the bushels to somebody else. All right. Just balances, just weights, a just ephah, and a just hin, whatever an ephah and a hin is. I am the Lord your God who brought you out of the land of Egypt, and you shall observe all my statutes and all my rules and do them. I am the Lord. And Christy figured out last week why we have to keep all of the statutes to let us know ain't nobody any better than anybody else.
This is our equivalent of being a parent and saying, because I said so.
That's exactly right. Is there such thing as fairness in the Bible? Just curious. That just popped into my head. So, well,
depends on whose perspective that comes from.
Well, okay, that's a good point. But in Western civilization, right?
Yeah, I mean,
everything's about fairness. Well, that's not fair.
Of fairness.
That's not equitable.
It's not ours.
Yeah. If God were fair, we'd all go to hell. If God were treating us fairly from Mount Sinai, if he had treated the Israelites fairly from Mount Sinai, when they made the golden calf, he would have killed them all and said, okay, Moses, step on up. I'm going to make a nation out of you now.
I think when we look on the surface, we think that's unfair. But like when Cain and Abel, when Cain brought his offering, I always thought when a little child, well, why didn't God accept that? He worked the land and he brought this, and why didn't he do that? On the surface, it looks like God's being unfair. But when you get in and study why, you understand that, he was not doing right. He was not doing what he was supposed to do. So it's on the surface, it looks like it's unfair.
Lord's been talking to you because that is a perfect example. Yeah. Cain, Abel. Cain brings his offering to the Lord, and the Lord, well, I'm not going to accept that. Well, why? Why? That's not fair. Well, I'm going to explain to you why. Just going to let you go. Cain, what does Cain do? He goes out and kills his brother. Right? So it was his actions in killing his brother that proved that the offering that he was bringing was unworthy. Because it's what's in your heart. It's what's in your heart, which is what the Lord looks at. Excellent point. An excellent example. Excellent example. All right, cool. All right, so I am the Lord. Keep all my statutes. That apple you're eating, when did that come off the tree? When was that tree planted? Is that a second season apple? Is that a third season apple? Did you have a piece of shellfish the other day? They slipped that in the stew. Did you eat a little piece of octopus? Anyway, all right. Leviticus chapter 20. Oh, excellent. Unapproved sexual relations. Yay! Here we go. All right. But now, yes, it's a good thing we can really get into it now. Oh, man. This is almost as good as, the bodily discharges. So, all right, unapproved sexual relations. But now, in this chapter, it's focused on Canaan. And Canaan is a promised land. Remember, Melchizedek was the king of Salem, which became Jerusalem, which was the land of Canaan. Okay? It's where Abraham first dwelt. Then the nation went down into Egypt, and now they're coming back into Canaan. So we're talking about the land that I'm bringing you to. Verse 1, and the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, say to the people of Israel, any one of the people of Israel, or of the strangers who sojourn, just talking about that, in Israel, who gives any of his children to Molech, shall surely be put to death. Now, giving your children to Molech meant burning your children to death as an offering to this pagan Canaanite god. And there was at least one king of Israel that did this later on. I can't remember who it was. All right, the land they're going to, the promised land. Watch out for Molech worship. That is no bueno. People of the land shall stone him with stones. I myself will set my face against that man and will cut him off from among his people if you all miss stoning him. All right, I'll take care of it myself. Because he has given one of his children to Molech to make my sanctuary unclean and to profane my holy name. So the fact that it's done in the land and God's sanctuary is also in the land at that time makes God's sanctuary unclean. And if the people of the land do it all, close their eyes to that man, ignore it, okay, when he gives one of his children to Molech and do not put him to death, then I will set my face against that man who ignored the Molech worship and against his clan and will cut them off from among the people. So it's going to go beyond the person who ignored it into their whole family, their whole clan. I'm going to take care of that. Him and all who follow him in whoring after Molech. All right, then he goes a step further. If a person turns to mediums and necromancers, whoring after them, I will set my face against that person and will cut him off from amongst his people. All right? Seeking secret knowledge from God or the spiritual world is forbidden by anyone who has not been called by God directly to be a prophet. And basically, to be a prophet, you have to, every prophet, I'm not sure that every single prophet states this, but it was the understanding in Israel that in order to be called to be a prophet, at some point you were shown the throne room in heaven. Okay, even St. Paul, the Apostle Paul, at some point in his ministry was taken up and shown the kingdom, the throne in heaven, like Ezekiel and Isaiah and so forth. All right? So anyone who's not been called by God directly to be a prophet. Now, can you think of anything going on in modern society? Well, you can actually think of a lot of stuff, but something that came to mind when I was prepping for this was, I'm not even sure that this TV show is still on the air, The Long Island Medium. Every time I would see that show, it would give me the creeps. This was a woman, just a middle-class woman who lived on Long Island, and she claimed to be a medium. She could go into a house and tell if there were ghosts and spiritual beings.
No, she talked
to the dead.
spirits,
Yeah.
or they talked to her.
Yeah, that's probably not a good thing for Christians to be watching or involved in any of that stuff. I'm going to go for a reading and have my palm read and all this stuff. And there are passages in the prophets where the women would make these bands to go around the wrist, and it was spiritual catching stuff, and the men were just as bad as the women. I mean, they were fallen into this superstition and thinking that you could connect with. God says, you better cut that stuff out, and you better be afraid of me and leave that stuff alone. All right. Verse 7, consecrate yourselves therefore and be holy, for I am the Lord your God. Verse 8, keep my statutes and do them. I am the Lord who sanctifies you. I am making you more and more and more holy. All right? Sanctification. 4, anyone who curses his father or his mother shall surely be put to death. He has cursed his father or his mother. His blood is upon him. Now note that the reminder to honor parents begins a section about sexual immorality, which destroys the family unit, the basic structure of society. Now, it's also sanguinary, where you have children, direct descendants, and also affinity relationships through marriage. Your in-laws. If a man commits adultery with the wife of his neighbor, both the adulterer and the adulteress shall surely be put to death. If a man lies with his father's wife, he has uncovered his father's nakedness. Both of them shall surely be put to death. Their blood is upon them. If a man lies with his daughter-in-law, both of them shall surely be put to death. They have committed perversion. Their blood is upon them. If a man lies with a male as with a woman, both of them have committed an abomination. They shall surely be put to death. Their blood is upon them. It's interesting that their blood is upon them. So is also used for the case of murder. Okay, so adultery is, God's eyes, basically the same as murder. It's destructive. It kills. If a man takes a woman and her mother also, it's depravity. They shall be burned with fire, that there may be no depravity among you. If a man lies with an animal, he shall surely be put to death. You shall kill the animal. If a woman approaches any animal and lies with it, you shall kill the woman and the animal. They shall surely be put to death. Their blood is upon them. All right. Any thoughts so far?
That's pretty straightforward.
Pretty straightforward. Verse 17. If the man takes his sister, a daughter of his father or a daughter of his mother, and sees her nakedness, and she sees his nakedness, they have sex, in other words, it is a disgrace. They shall be cut off in the sight of the children of their people. He has uncovered his sister's nakedness. He shall bear his iniquity. So, who can we think about from the Bible that would fall in that category? That would be Abram and Sarai. Okay? We're half siblings. But God is saying, you know what? We're going to stop that now. All right? We ain't going to be marrying half siblings anymore. All right? If a man lies with a woman during her menstrual period and uncovers her nakedness, he has made naked her fountain, and she has uncovered the fountain of her blood. Both of them shall be cut off from among their people. You know, I was thinking about this since we're all, since Jada has left. You could actually be making love, and in the midst of that process, your wife's period could start. Okay, and you may not even realize it until you've finished. And so, you know, there's a lot going on with this stuff that people need to be aware of, and that is kind of a little bit out of your control, but maybe it's not, maybe it is. It's all this thing, and it all goes back to what Christy said. You know what? Y'all are nasty. You're just nasty. You are nasty, nasty. And I'm not even talking about physically. Y'all are spiritually nasty. You're just nasty, but I love you. I can't help it. I love you, but you're nasty. All right. Verse 19, you shall not uncover the nakedness of your mother's sister or of your father's sister. That would be your aunt. For that is to make naked one's relative. They shall bear their iniquity. If a man lies with his uncle's wife, he has uncovered his uncle's nakedness. They shall bear their sin. They shall die childless. If a man takes his brother's wife, it is impurity. He has uncovered his brother's nakedness. They shall be childless. And the big example I think of there would be in the New Testament when Herod took his brother Antipas's wife, and John the Baptist showed up, and John the Baptist spoke up for righteousness. He said, Herod, that's not right. You're not supposed to be doing that. And it was that speaking up for righteousness that led to John getting beheaded. Because I can't remember the woman's name, but she would. Now, Jezebel was from the Old Testament. So, but in that case, she got a bone in her throat over it because John the Baptist was saying it's not right for you two to be married. Well, Herod didn't really care. He wasn't really paying attention, but it got under her skin. And then eventually, when she had the opportunity to have him beheaded, she did. So anyway, you're still supposed to speak up for righteousness. Yes, sir.
The thing about your brother's wife, if your brother dies and leaves no children, isn't there a part in the Bible where it says that it's your duty to marry her and raise up children in the family name?
Yes, exactly.
Up until now.
No. That guidance is going to.
She would be a widow then.
Right. Yeah. If the brother's still alive,
Right.
then you don't want to be doing that. But when Brent is exactly right. That was part of the process. I'm going to move over here so I can see you guys a little bit more clearly. Here we go. All right. Cool. All right. Now, note, at this point in Israel's history, women and children are nearly 100% reliant upon the family structure. All right, this is ancient civilization. The point in time that we're talking about here is probably somewhere between 2,800 years ago and 3,200 years ago. They don't know the exact date of the Exodus, in the time at Sinai, but it was probably at least 800 years BC. So this is a long time ago, all right? Women and children are 100% reliant upon the family structure for basic survival. These laws were critical to the survival of God's chosen people as a nation. Men and women had to behave correctly if the people of God were to survive and thrive. And also, it falls into what Susie said earlier, because I told you to. Okay? I want you to do this because I told you to. All right?
Okay, if you have sexual relations with your sister of either your mother or your father, that would dishonor. Both of you will be held responsible. Does that mean that they were put to death? Or was there just something that they had to do? I mean, because then the next one is they will die childless. That was kind of like a curse. So
there may be another place in Scripture. Remember, because all throughout Leviticus, this stuff is all sprinkled through, and you have to gather it together and look at the different things and so forth. And a lot of the different sins and so forth are spoken about in a different place. But it goes to, this is what God does not want you to do. So when it goes to that, in this case, though, it doesn't get into direct. And keep in mind, too, and I don't want to belabor this point, but the Israelites, they didn't really keep many of these laws. Okay? They were rebellious right out of the chute. All right? And remember that Paul said that the law came because of sin. Okay? And it's almost like God, and we've talked about this before, once we get to Leviticus, because what they had done with the golden calf, it's almost like God is piling on with law after law after law after law after law after law. And it's all, in a sense, designed to humble you before God, make you aware of your own sin. But he also wants you to do this stuff. I mean, it's clear all throughout Scripture. God wants you to follow his law and his precepts. And there's freedom in doing that. I think that's in Psalm 119. But on the other hand, you can't do it. You can't do it perfectly. You can't even do it really good. You're because you're nasty. All right? But I still want you to try. I want you to make an effort. All right, so verse 22, you shall therefore keep all my statutes and all my rules and do them, so that the land where I am bringing you to live may not vomit you out. Okay, like it has done with the Canaanites. All right? And you shall not walk in the customs of the nation that I am driving out before you, for they did all these things. Therefore, I detested them. Okay, so God detested them because they did these things. But I have said to you, you shall inherit their land, and I will give it to you to possess, a land flowing with milk and honey. I am the Lord your God who has separated you from the peoples. You shall therefore separate the clean beast from the unclean, and the unclean bird from the clean. You shall not make yourselves detestable by beast or by bird or by anything with which the ground crawls, which I created. What? Okay, and now let's look at, Susie, would you look up Genesis 8:20? Going back before the law was given.
Then Noah built an altar to the Lord, and taking some of all the clean animals and clean birds, he sacrificed burnt offerings on it.
Clean, unclean. The clean animals are sacrificed after the flood subsides. And now go to 9:3. But
Everything that lives and moves about will be food for you. Just as I gave you the green plants, I now give you everything.
you can eat everything for food. But there were clean and unclean animals, but God said you can eat everything. Until we get to Leviticus. Now God is limiting what you can eat. And then in the time of Jesus, again, God frees us up to follow our own conscience and eat whatever we want. All right, so it's back and forth. How is God working? What is he saying? Because I told you so. All right, so there's not any inherent evil, if you will, in eating octopus or shellfish or whatever. It's simply because God said, well, this is what I want you to do, and this is what I want you to do in this case, and this is what I want you to do. All right, so all right. Verse 22, we finished that. All right. Verse 26, you shall be holy, for I am the Lord, and for I, the Lord, am holy, and have separated you from the peoples, that you should be mine. You must be different from the peoples, especially the peoples of the land that I am bringing you to, Canaan. A man or woman who is a medium or a necromancer shall surely be put to death. They shall be stoned with stones. Their blood shall be upon them. All right. Any final thoughts? All right. Go ahead.
We now know that the Levitical laws of eating are much healthier.
There are many people that subscribe to that.
But we know that seafood has a very high level of toxicity. And if it's shellfish, they're siphons and they're filters, and they have toxins in them that your body can handle it in small amounts. But if you eat a lot of seafood, a lot of shellfish, it will break down your immune system and you will get sick.
But keep in mind that most Bible scholars, and I personally agree, I don't think the dietary laws have really anything to do with health. I think that they were the dietary laws that God had given them because he wanted to give them. That it was just, these are the dietary laws. Can't eat pork. Well, if you were eating raw pork...
It's a coincidence that those things now will make you sick.
Well, it's keep in mind, Brent, it's 2,800 years ago. All right. So right now there are a lot of things I think going on in the environment which may contribute to that, may not. I think I'm not discounting that. I'm just saying that personally, I don't
The
think that
environment was a lot cleaner back then.
theoretically. I mean, we don't know for sure, but maybe it could be. And I'm not certainly not discounting that.
They drank out of the river where the animals walked around. And
Yeah, I think in a lot of ways it was much nastier, so who knows? Who knows for sure? But good point. I appreciate that.
the beauty is we have the freedom to eat how we're led to eat.
Right.
And that's fine. There's no judgments on that
No,
anymore.
absolutely not. And there are some people, Brent, that believe that God gave these laws, the dietary laws, because it would be healthier for the people. Absolutely, there are. But I think what there tends to be a tendency where people think, well, that's why God gave the dietary laws, because they're ultimately healthier for the people. Well, you know what? The wages of sin is death, and we're all going to collect our pay at some point, right? So whether you're eating just sheep and lamb all the time, or you slip in a little bit of shellfish, or you're a shellfish addict, or what, I mean, you sneak in a little pork, or, I'm eating pork all the time, like in the Gadarenes, it, like Christy said, y'all are nasty. None of you are right, So I think that's a trap to fall into, to think, well, this law was just given to make the people healthier. I think it was given just
God has multiple reasons.
Absolutely.
He's multi-dimensional. He's not
Absolutely.
subject to our parameters. It's not either or. He has lots of reasons for things.
Yeah, because I saw a situation when I was working at the movie club. There was this one guy who was in his 30s, go to the gym, worked out all the time, tried to eat as healthy as he could, but still at the same time the man had a heart attack. So do it really makes that much of a difference how you present? Because like Joe just said, your time is your time. You're not going to change it by how you eat or how you exercise. I'm not saying that exercise is bad, because it's good, but like you said, it's just something that it's not going to change a whole lot when your time comes. God's got a number for everybody.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right, Leviticus chapter 21.
But
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
our bodies are a temple,
True.
and we should do whatever in our own minds keeps our temples clean and reset and the
Yeah.
nasty
Yeah.
washed out. It spiritually, I mean, but
Okay. Now
we're stewards of
But
everything
now you
God
said
gives us.
something that different
is our
right there.
body.
Miss Susan. You said something there that's also physically I can do all the things. Spiritually, there's a whole different ballgame when you have to try to keep yourself spiritually minded in a certain way. And eating healthy and all that stuff is not spiritual. That's just physically, every day. And exercise, that's every day. That's physical. Spiritually, you get, like Joe's doing now, you have to get in him to get spiritual with it.
Well, I think that's an interesting point, Michael. However, I disagree with you a little bit. I think that there are things that we could do, like Brent was talking about. You know what? It's a whole lot healthier to not eat a lot of shellfish. It's a whole lot healthier to not eat a lot of pork. And so, absolutely grant that. And also, things that we do in our lives, like, for example, here's the Western civilization probably major dietary sin in the world right now.
Overeating.
Yeah.
Well, I think
It's that's a sin that
eat healthy. Okay, God has a time where that's your time. God controls that. But you can take that time from here and live a healthier life and feel better in your body physically. Same thing spiritually.
Be less sick.
You
yes,
still have that time
absolutely.
spiritually, and you can feed on God and have a better spiritual life during that time or not. I mean, it's both parallel. I mean, you're gonna have your time. It's
Absolutely.
appointed,
Right.
but you can flourish.
The only thing I see in the Bible what God grants long life is obey your parents.
Right.
Or honor your parents.
Yeah, that is the commandment with a promise. Right. But keep in mind, along with what Chrissy just said, God has appointed a time for each of us. Right? Absolutely. I'll tell you another thing the Bible clearly says, okay, that the way you live your life affects the way that God will treat you and the kind of life you live. All right. Now we're all, like 1 Corinthians 7, where Paul says, "Let each man live the life that he was given by the Lord in the time and the place that he was born in." But Scripture also, half of the Proverbs, or at least a third of them, are about if you do this, then God will bless you this way. If you obey in this way, then God will bless you this way. So, and as Brent said, honoring your, God has given a promise there. Well, if you treat your parents a certain way, generally speaking, you're going to have long life. Will you always, in every situation? No. God doesn't owe anybody anything, but we can live our lives in certain ways that will affect our circumstances and our lives.
Well,
So it's the whole, is it free will or is it
want
God?
to
Yes, it's both.
lead a healthy lifestyle because we're living sacrifices. Eating could not have been any easier than it was in the Garden of Eden, and they couldn't pull it off.
Oh, that's a great point.
Oh, man.
Just one tree.
And you don't even have to
Pretty
work
good at
it.
stuff,
It's there's no weeds or
Probably many
anything.
thousands
It's
of trees.
awesome.
Hey, since we're the garden, I was thinking about something this week, and I wanted to share it with you guys. So I always wondered, what did it mean, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil? Well, you know what? Tom Brady knows. Wait, follow me here. Tom Brady knows football.
Mm-hmm.
He knows it. Okay? Babe Ruth knew baseball.
Mm-hmm.
He knew it. He was good at it. All right? So the tree of the knowledge of good and evil was something going to be imparted into their brains. And when God says, when they ate of the tree, now the man and woman are like us. And I don't think he was referring to the Trinity. He was referring to God's court. Okay, his hierarchy of angels. Now the men and women are like us because they know good and evil. You know how they know good and evil? Because they just did evil by eating from the tree. In the same way you know baseball, now you know how to disobey by eating from the tree I told you did not eat from. Because you ate from it, in the act of eating from that tree, you disobeyed. So now you know evil because you've made the choice to do evil. But they also know good. Okay, so they knew good and evil because of what they did. I don't know that there was any kind of magical supernatural substance in the fruit that they ate, but it was the act of eating what had been forbidden. Now they know how to disobey. Was there disobedience before this in heaven?
First sin.
Well, was there disobedience before this in heaven? Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely, because the angels knew good and evil. They knew that was bad, this is good. Don't do that,
Well,
do
evil
this.
existed when they were put in the garden.
Yes, but the man and woman were innocent. They hadn't
Yes.
tasted of evil
Right.
because they had not disobeyed. Anyway, I just wanted to throw that out. You get that for extra? There won't be any extra charge on the way out for that one? Go ahead.
I got a theory on that. It's not biblically substantiated, but I think there's a possibility, besides the fact that they sinned and disobeyed God, which I think that was the big root cause of their knowledge of good and evil, because they sinned and disobeyed God. But I have a theory that also that fruit could have had a high level of DMT, which is in all living things. It's in our brains, it's in our plants, and it's
What's DMT?
dimethyltryptamine. They call it the God molecule. And it's in all living things. It's never found in anything that's not living. And it has been, the theory is that it's the molecule that helps us to connect spiritually.
Interesting. Very interesting. All right. So back to Leviticus chapter 21, verse 1. And the Lord said to Moses, speak to the priests, the sons of Aaron. Okay, so this is for the priests. And say to them, no one shall make himself unclean for the dead among his people, except for his closest relatives. His mother, his father, his son, his daughter, his brother, or his virgin sister, who is near to him because she has no husband. For her he may make himself unclean. He shall not make himself unclean as a husband among his people, and so profane himself. So what does that mean? So basically this is saying that your father, your son, your daughter dies, you can become unclean, you can handle the dead body. Okay? That's what it means. You can go, you can help prepare the body for burial. When you handled a dead body, you were unclean. You had to follow certain guidances to become clean again. But as a husband among his people, the explanation for that is as a kinsman by marriage. So a brother-in-law, a father-in-law, a mother-in-law, you're not to make yourself unclean for that. All right, but only for a close relative defiling himself. So referring to contact with the dead by regular priests, not the high priest. Avoid contact with the dead except for the close relatives listed here, immediate family. Now, Susie, would you read Luke chapter 10? Starting in verse 30. We're not going to read this whole thing, but I wanted you to take a look at the beginning. Yes, it's the Good Samaritan. When Jesus is called out by one of the legal teachers, and he said, well, you know, the number one.
Said.
Yeah, so Jesus said, well, and he said, so who is my neighbor? Was the question that was asked to Jesus. And Jesus shared, we're not going to read through the whole Good Samaritan, but I want you to hear the way it starts. Go ahead.
A man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho when he was attacked by robbers. They stripped him of his clothes, beat him, and went away, leaving him half dead.
Okay, stop. So he's laying on the side of the road. He's unconscious. He's half dead, but he sure looks like he's dead, right? Go ahead.
A priest happened to be going down the same road, and when he saw the man, he passed by on the other side.
A priest, okay?
So too a Levite, when he came to the place and saw him, passed by on the other side.
Stop. Okay, priest and a Levite see the dead body. Okay, in the back of their minds, because of this section in Leviticus. Remember, the Levites served the priests. They were handling holy objects. They were doing holy things. They were in the service of the sanctuary. They weren't allowed to make themselves unclean. Okay, the priest was not allowed to make himself unclean for a random body. All right? Then we all know.
Shout across the road, hey dude, are you okay?
Theoretically, but they did what I would have done because I'm the chief Pharisee. I would have said, and I would have walked on. He's dead. He's dead anyway. Somebody will catch up with that body. And then at the end, Jesus calls out a Samaritan. Well, we all know the story of the Samaritans were just north of Jerusalem in Israel. The nasty 10 tribes that had split off after Solomon, Jeroboam, and Rehoboam, and God allows or causes the nation to split. The Samaritans go off and they make themselves some golden calves. Okay, and the Samaritans think they're worshiping Yahweh, but they're worshiping these golden calves. They were even nastier. Okay, and the Samaritans were hated by the Judahites, okay, the Jews in Judah, okay, the followers of Yahweh, that nasty northern kingdom where they were taken into captivity by Assyria. And those Samaritans, they don't know what's going on. Okay, a good picture of this is in, is it John 4 or 2, 3, 4, one of those chapters, it's the woman at the well. He's in Samaria. What are you doing in Samaria? That's where those nasty Samaritans are. So anyway, Jesus uses a Samaritan. Okay, the lowest of the low before you get to being just a pure Gentile is the guy who was a neighbor to this person, this poor man that was attacked. So he's shaming the Jewish leaders by saying even a Samaritan knew what the right thing to do was, but because the priest and the Levite were so focused on, well, I've got to be right in this situation and I can't make myself unclean. Okay, got it. But Jesus is saying, you know what, your compassion should override that.
So what Jesus was saying, that the Levite and the priest, and Jesus came doing this himself, broke that tradition of what it done and show compassion.
Well, it goes even beyond. So the priest could have been heading up to Jerusalem because it was his turn to serve. You can see that with Zechariah, Elizabeth's husband, the father of John the Baptizer. Okay, it was his turn by lot to serve. Well, you know what by lot means. God just arranges it. It was his turn to serve and serve the incense in the temple, and his turn came up by lot. So that was what was going on in Israel at that time. The priests were serving in the temple by lot. It was your turn to serve. So this priest and Levi could have been heading up going, you know what, I got to get there. I got to serve in the temple.
And I don't want to have to.
I can't have to deal with being unclean and handling a dead body. So I'm just going to step away from that. Jesus is going, look, you know, you need to have compassion on your neighbor. Mm-hmm. You know what this man's situation is. So anyway.
Yeah, but I never looked at it from that point of view, Joe, where you're talking about the priest and the Levite. The reason they didn't do it because it would make them unclean.
Now, we don't know that for sure. Scripture doesn't say that, but you can assume that.
Yeah, because that's the practice of that. I never really pictured it that way.
Yep.
You just thought they were like,
I
I
just
don't
thought
want
it
to
was
mess
just
with
being
them.
mean and hateful. Most people think it was being mean and hateful. But, you know, even though they did it, if they did it that way, it's still, Christ is saying it's wrong not to show compassion.
Exactly. So when Jesus is having this discussion with the Pharisees, okay, when he mentions a priest and a Levite going up to they knew exactly what he was talking about.
He was poking them in the eye.
He's poking them in the eye. Y'all can't even show compassion on a dead guy lying on the side of the road? But a Samaritan could figure that one out. He had compassion. But you, great priest and Levite, servants of the Most High God, you leave this dead man. You don't even know. You just leave him laying there and walk right past him.
I'm going to be like Miss Susie now. You mean he couldn't have just told you, hey, you might need to get somebody else to fill my spot?
Yeah, I mean, you could have looked over and maybe poked him with a stick or something. They didn't even do anything. They just walked past.
I did this, so you need to fill my spot. Call me in. You know, call that person in.
Call the backup priest.
Yeah.
All right, and we are out of time, so we are going to finish there. But I thought that was a great, interesting way to look at the Good Samaritan. So we're going to pick up in verse 5 next week. Great discussion, guys. I appreciate you sharing. Any final thoughts before we...
You just had to mention Tom Brady today, didn't you?
Well, I wanted to use it as an example. When you know something, you're good at it. He knows carpentry.
And is that a second Tom Brady? Wasn't there a Tom Brady before this one?
There might have been. I don't know. Mm-hmm. But from now on, there will be only one
Tom Brady.
Who's on that football I have?